GM. It's May 2nd. We are back after a wild weekend. We had the Otherdeed sale. There was craziness, and now money's flowing to other projects. So we'll talk about that today. So, Tyler, it was a wild weekend. We found out on Friday, late Thursday night, I believe it was, that basically they were going to pivot off of what Yuga's original sale was going to be. And it went from, oh, we're going to be doing a Dutch auction, and it's going to be off of starting price. We weren't sure what it was going to be. And then it turned out that we're going to have a flat price, and you can mint two of them, 305 ape, and basically only for the KYC wallet. So what was your thought process on, was this the right move for Yuga, and sort of how that played out?
Yeah, I mean, first off, we built it a Super Bowl weekend for NFTs, and it did not disappoint. It was fireworks galore. It was a roller coaster weekend, tons of flooding, all-time high records getting smashed. We'll get into all of that. Was it the right decision? My current reaction to the decision, I mean, certainly I didn't love it. What was it? So much to unpack. So first, they changed the time. The time change probably impacted a decent amount of people. It definitely wiped out everyone's Saturday night. They did this whole thing shrouded in mystery, right? So we had such little information to work off of. And, I wasted a whole lot of time trying to play out all these scenarios with number of KYC wallets. How many of these people who KYC'd are going to have enough ape coin in their wallet to actually make it to mint 1 or 2 or get to wave 2? And then at the end of the day, it played out like a lot of people thought was the most obvious scenario. It sold out in wave 1, which means people got to max mint 2 each at the 305 price, 610 total, in a gas war, in a 3-hour-long gas war, which I guess headed into this, I didn't know enough about the blockchain to kind of understand the mechanics of the transaction limiters per block. And then the threads started coming out during the day on Saturday, and everyone was saying, this is going to last for 90 minutes plus just because of transaction limits. And they were right. The Ethereum network was unusable for 3 hours Saturday night. And it's all because of their decisions and how this played out.
Yeah, and what was interesting about it is people still minted it out and were willing to pay those high gas fees. I'm not sure the exact numbers off the top of my head, but it seemed like if you didn't send at least 5,000 Gwei, you didn't even have a shot. It doesn't even matter what time you did. Personally, I threw out about 2,500 Gwei immediately, and it got rejected. And then it basically spiked over 8,000 for most of the sale. And then, a lot of people out there who were preparing for this mint and spent the 5 Ethereum or whatever to get 610 ape. Now they're sitting here trying to mint, and they don't have another 2 ETH to spend on this. So one take that I've had and seen from people is it sort of became a rich get richer scenario where people that have maybe saved up 5 Ethereum to participate in the sale and be a part of the Yuga ecosystem now still cannot, because they didn't have the extra 2 ETH in order to actually make those mints. So do you think that this really hurt the people who have less Ethereum?
Yeah, it absolutely did. Basically, the mint ended up serving those who were experienced, and to your point, had the ETH. So if you kind of put your small bankroll into ApeCoin, you were out of luck, right? Yeah. You had to have, to your point, you had to have probably 2 ETH on the sidelines to pay the gas bill to have a shot at this. And certainly, I'm part of the problem. Personally, I slammed gas up to 11K way fairly early on because I just wanted to lock in a mint and not have to sweat it for 3 hours. So I'm absolutely part of the problem. And we'll admit that. But I've heard tons of firsthand stories about folks who weren't able to get through, so they didn't allocate enough ETH. And this is just another thing that could have avoided if Yuga didn't have to do everything in mystery, right? Like, out some detail. Like, if the goal of this was to expand the community and provide a new entry point for a broader group of users, then why does it have to all be secret? Put some information out there for what to expect. Tons of projects do that, right?
Yeah.
Folks like Gary Vee are great about that. I mean, Gary Vee will lay out a how-to guide of how to buy ETH, starting with US dollars in your bank account. Like, he'll give you the guide for how to do it. And then meanwhile, Yuga is just, fuck it, we hate Dutch auctions. Here's the price. Here's the new time. Good luck. And I think for the first time, we are seeing some pretty big pushback against them from the decisions they made here, and a fairly underwhelming reaction thread from them. And I don't think it's temporary. I think it's an issue that they're going to be battling here for the near future.
Yeah, and sort of they've become this evil empire where they are talking very elitist like when they post these things, and it's sort of like, oh yeah, what we say is right. Like, Dutch auctions, we're not going to do a Dutch auction because this way's better, and then this way clearly wasn't better. And it's sort of like, what was the number they got? They already were in the top 10 in Ethereum burned, and basically the sale, like you mentioned, in 3 hours, they're passing some of these big exchanges even in just Ethereum burned. And it clearly, in my mind, clearly was a fail as far as the mint goes. And it sort of becomes a, are they too big to fail? Because they still have been relatively successful post mint, whereas any other project that did this would just be completely dust right now. Otherdeeds went up to and held pretty much overnight around 7 to 8 Ethereum for a floor, and then now they've revealed. So what's your thoughts on the post reveal? Because Codas now have this massive floor, but then the regular items that are just floor pieces of land have now dropped towards that 4 Ethereum range.
Yeah, I definitely want to get there. Just real quick before we move on, I want to address their thread briefly from Saturday night. Yeah, we've got it on the screen here. So they said they wanted to say a few words. They were accurate. It was very few words, and it was not very apologetic in any way. I think the piece that people jumped out on the most was the 5th tweet here. We're like, we're sorry for turning off the lights on Ethereum. And then they basically allude to how they want to start their own chain, and they want to encourage their DAO to start pursuing that. I think that's a ton of pressure to put on their DAO, whether or not that's the right direction or not. Then became all the takes came out. Did they do this on purpose? This mint style to highlight some issues with the Ethereum chain to make them have their own chain. And I don't know if I buy into that or not. But end of the day, 55,000 ETH burned or more during this mint, over $150 million. That's out of people's wallets. It's out of the NFT ecosystem. It all went to the miners. It's gone. So that is a big issue. But getting into the price action, now a lot of that worry, at least from what I saw, a lot of the negative sentiment went away on Sunday because the number went up. And that's the NFT market and NFT Twitter to a T there. General sentiment is tied to market price. So kind of how it went, I think Saturday night it was kind of getting 6 to 8 ETH range. Definitely solid above 8. I went to bed around midnight Eastern, kind of stopped watching it. We had the undercutter hours in the morning, and then it was right around 7.2 pre-reveal. There was a lot of speculation on what the Coda floor would be out of the gate. The number that I kept seeing was right around 30, and that was it. I mean, it basically came out of the gate at 30. Anything listed at 20, any Coda listed at 25 was basically snap selling, and the floor held right around, I'd say 28, 29 for most of the day yesterday. So then if you think about the CODA ETH being priced into the pre-reveal, so then you essentially need to take off 3 ETH for a 10% shot at a 30 ETH CODA. So you would expect the floor to drop from pre-reveal by about 3, and that's essentially what's happened here. So the overall floor 4.3 right now, live during the show here this afternoon, and I've got the CODA floor here up. We can zoom in and take a look at some of these. At 26.5 roughly right now. So it's dipped a little bit from the high, but still holding pretty steady there. I think two thoughts. You have to handle CODAs and the floor separately. Anyone who banked a CODA is incredibly happy right now. I mean, this is a top 5% outcome price wise, at least in my opinion, for where these are trading at. They're trading higher than mutants. The mutant floor tanked from 40 to mid 20s. So CODAs have indeed flipped them, which a lot of people were predicting. So I think most folks who got the CODA are very happy. Those with the floors, I think, maybe not, right? So the overall floor is down to like 4.3. It was at 3.8 this morning as the undercutters came in heavy again in that 9 to 12 a.m. Eastern window. It was approaching mint. I mean, we think effective mint price was right around 3.5 to 3.75 ETH, I'd say, for these. So I think people were starting to get nervous. I'm following the sales feed pretty closely, and the feed I have has the prior purchase price. One of my surprise takeaways is it's a lot of, I don't know if you want to call them panic sellers, but it's a lot of people taking losses on these already and just looking to get out. So I don't know if that's just lack of conviction in the project, a nature of the huge supply, or just newcomers to the market who are kind of panicking when the floor goes down, or maybe a combination of all three. So I think a little bit disappointing here in the short term, I'd say, on the floor, but maybe kind of what we should expect with the CODA ETH.
Yeah, it comes back down. Like I think people just sort of assume this 4 ETH is about right, and people who mint are still above. I think if it gets below that and starts getting closer to mint, then some people who, as mentioned earlier, a lot of people, this was a bulk of their bankroll.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to be a part of Yuga. Everything Yuga has been pretty successful if you bought, sold, held. And this sort of brings me to another point that you had mentioned when we were talking before the show, where unless you got a CODA, this wasn't that great of a mint for you overall. And 10% of these minted had CODAs. If you minted at that, say, 3.5 ETH, instead of buying, say, a bean that or a cyber broker, these others that were in that range, now those started moving after this mint, because then the money seemingly started moving other places. So what's your thoughts on just in general, like the other projects that have been getting some of this? Like 160,000 ETH has already been traded on this, and clearly a lot of that is moving towards other projects. Or if someone say sold a CODA, they might be buying the floors of these. But it almost seems like if you got a floor Otherdeed, it's somewhat of a fail because other parts of the market have been booming.
Yeah, it was definitely a risk. So, I mean, in hindsight, the optimal way to trade it appears to have been mint, sell pre-reveal, right? Kind of right before the reveal happened. So you would have gotten around 7. It would have been a 2x. But of course, you would have lost your shot at a CODA, but would have locked in 100% gain. I think the other challenging part of the negative sentiment is anyone who bought secondary and didn't get a CODA is absolutely down. And that's including myself. Like I picked up a few of these on secondary. Average price is probably between 7 and 8. And if anyone got a floor, for the most part, they're underwater there. So I think that hurts the reaction. But I think the biggest number, we haven't talked about this, we've kind of buried the lead. 166,000 ETH traded. since effectively midnight Eastern, Saturday night, Sunday morning. So we're talking a day and a half. Smashed the single day record. I don't know what the specific tally was, but it was well over 100,000 ETH traded the first day. I personally tweeted when Moonbirds did 50,000, will this ever get broken? It was broken 2 weeks later. Not only was it broken, it was smashed by 2x. So,
and to put that in comparison, Azuki is at 190,000 total.
yeah,
So this is going to catch Azuki by the end of the week.
maybe by today.
Yeah.
So I don't think that can. We can't discount that. So clearly the funds are here. Outside money is here. This did not come from the NFT ecosystem. While the floors of most of the other projects did dip in the final couple of days leading up to Saturday night, they weren't down that significantly. We're talking 10 to 20% for most of these, and most of which are kind of back up, and we'll get there here in a second. But I mean, we got to take a look at the Dune dashboard and just see these numbers. They've had to change the scales for those who are familiar with this dashboard.
That one.
It's 475 million, and this is just OpenSea. I think we have to assume LooksRare did 5% of this volume, right? So I mean, it was a $500 million day. 200. It was 2x anything we'd ever seen before. So I think the one of the highest level takeaways of this is when everyone said we were early last year, this to me is what they meant. That, we were playing a trading game with a pretty limited set of people, with a pretty limited pool of capital. And now the real money is starting to come in. So I think my high level takeaway is, if the funds are just now coming in, we should all be incredibly bullish on NFTs as an asset class in general. It doesn't mean every project is not going to go up, but if this much money could come in for one major project dropping, it's just such a good sign for what's to come here. And then today, I think this dashboard hasn't been updated for at least an hour. We're already at 140 million, so we've got a good shot to get over 200 million today. So May 2022 could very well be the new record-setting revenue month for NFTs, and in fact, it's probably favored to be that right now.
And it with a bulk of that was coming on the 30th, so that's part of it as well. Is like the 30th first is going to throw off some of the numbers for like monthly, but it was wild. Obviously, they ran it pretty late at night, and it never got to wave 2, right?
Correct. It never got to wave 2. What was nice is, for those who are a little bit more technical, you could see the number of like Etherscan pending transactions. Mm-hmm. So everyone who had the expertise could see when and where this was going to mint out. You could see the current gas levels, and if you were savvy enough, you were able to adjust your GUI to make sure you got them met. There was several other problems. We don't need to get into all of them, but there's clearly a lot of orchestrated KYC wallet buying, and people who got bots written to essentially buy from those wallets, empty the NFTs and empty the ETH all in one transaction on pretty large scale. So this drop still got botted. I guess every big drop will get botted at this point. But we talked about, we can talk about the other side for a full hour.
Yeah.
I know you want to move on, so let's start talking about where else the money has gone. So I think the first impact here, and let's take a look at the Lucky Trader rankings board. The rest of the Yuga ecosystem is down, and I think that was to be expected because the land was priced in. But I think this actually ended up being a more negative event for the Bored Apes and Mutant Apes than
the OGs
it should have been. And I think they're actually lost on this. So I think this is what David's saying
here. Yeah. He's saying that those who bought the 1 to 30,000 serial, which I believe were the Bored Apes for the first 10, and then Mutants were the next 20. Those were pre-reveal trading at a premium, but turned out that they're no different really from the rest.
Yeah. So let's look at the price action. So the mutant floor is 25. It was like 41 headed into Saturday night. So it drops by 15 ETH. Pre-reveal, the mutant tier land was trading at 15 ETH roughly. It was basically trading at 2x floor. So, priced efficiently. And then the Bored Ape Yacht Club, their land was trading around 35 ETH. So also, essentially their floor was like 155 or something. So again, efficiently priced and taken out. But then the reveal happened. And for whatever reason, the market decided that land wasn't valuable anymore. And they essentially crashed.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it specifically today, but I don't think the mutant land is carrying much of a premium beyond like 7 or 8 ETH. And I think similar story for the Bored Apes. And we can see the tiers on their website for those who may not be familiar. Let me pull it up here.
Right, and it's still just Coda. It's like Coda or bust. People don't even look at. Well, some of the serial numbers have traded higher, just from like people that are into, say, like 11111, things like that have still been trading, and like low serial. I think I saw serial number 8 sold at a premium. So there's still some stuff like that where if you were a Bored Ape, but say you had Bored Ape number 9,412, then unless you got a Coda, you probably lost out in some form.
Yeah, so that in this Explore tab from their website, they released an interactive map, and you can see where all those serials are. So pre-reveal, some folks were kind of playing the location game and thinking that plots, closest to the center or closest to beachfront were going to command a premium. As of right now, that hasn't really held. And then the same goes to the tiers of land, right? So the mutants all got this chemical goo gold tier 4, and then the Bored Apes got the biogenic swap, the acid land. Again, this comes back to Yuga. Yuga hasn't addressed anything related to this game or this world about how these tiers might be different. Just a basic announcement on, hey, tiers are going to matter in the future. That would have been enough to maintain the floors of these, at least fairly close. But essentially radio silence. The only announcement we got was related to Codas. There are mega Codas, the serials 9,900 to 1,000, and those have traded at a crazy premium. But again, the lack of info from Yuga has really hurt here, the MAYC and BAYC. And of course, I've seen the arguments. They're also entitled, right? They've been given all these airdrops. They shouldn't complain. And of course, that's very fair. But at this point in time, the optimal move was to sell your Bored Ape and your mutant before it lands. We'll see if that continues to have been the optimal move or not. But on a near-term time horizon, that would have been the move because the value of the land has dropped so much.
Yeah. So now some of these other projects have been pumping a little. I think the one that I noticed most was Doodles. So there's been somewhat of a there's high speculation on Doodles right now. There has been for the last few weeks. They did the space Doodles there that were non-dilutive, and people have kind of been pushing for them to do something different. And they have this bucket that has been part of the Discord and just attached to names recently. And there have been some tweets about how what Ape did isn't doing well, like what they did with their drop specifically. There's better ways to do it. And Poopy had commented on it with sort of a, yes, there are like indeed ways that you could be doing this better. And there's just been speculation in general. And now we saw a lot of this money moving towards Doodles, and they've broken through the 20 ETH barrier. So what do you think about Doodles? Do you think this is just max hype right now, or are we going to see something potentially this week come out from the Doodles team?
Yeah, I think so. Doodles was my surprise of the weekend. If you look down the board, this was kind of the products that I predicted were going to be the winners: Moonbirds, Zukis, Clonex, and then Ragnarok. Doodles was surprised. I didn't have them pegged necessarily as essentially the top winner. I think they are the top winner. They're up 21%. At 22.69. I think there's a couple factors at play here. One, 590 listed. So this is a 5.9% listed set. It just kind of goes to show the diamond hands in the community, the people who love this product, who are interested in trading it right now. What's driving the action right now? It's all hype and speculation. So it's rumors of an announcement that's going to come this week. At this point, I feel like a companion is probably priced in at this point. I mean, this product just jumped from 14 to 22 basically over the weekend. That's a pretty big jump. Certainly on any big announcement, I think it'll likely run a little bit further, but it's definitely getting up there. But it just kind of goes to show how much people like doodles, how strong of a community and holder base they do have. Space capsules was kind of a bust, but everyone's willing to give them another shot. Now, I think they're expecting what I'll call a dilutive drop, something that will be sellable as an NFT in addition to their doodle. And if this next one gets botched in some way or the market doesn't like it, I think doodles is going to be in danger of the Cool Cats price arc.
Yeah, it's almost like they have this massive hype around it right now. And there's still a lot of people that their take is, what have doodles done? And if they come out with something that people don't like, then I can see this having that sharp fall off. But as you mentioned, like, it already might be priced in that sort of push from 15 to now 22. And, we could see them come out with something that is potentially an airdrop. But if it's not an airdrop, are people going to get mad that they're not getting free money? And then that whole thing. So still unsure of clearly what it is. We just started the month of May, and I would guess, why not do something while there's money moving around right now? You might see a lot of projects doing stuff. The other one is with Azuki. So they just announced right before we hopped on, Beans are going to be revealing on the 5th. So this has been a hyped drop for now over a month, and this is going to be on Thursday. Beans, since that announcement, it went from 6.5 up to 7.5, now back around 7 Ethereum for the floor. So I personally think it's already priced in as well, and the post reveal, it'll drop, because right now they're about, what, 1/4 or so of the price of an Azuki. I'm not sure if that's considered high or about right, because there is 20,000 of these. So is that about what you usually look at? Is it's 2 times supply, then multiply that by 2, and 1/4 is about right? Or do you think that these are potentially overpriced, but you still have the rare lotto baked in?
I don't think they're overpriced. I think they're appropriately priced. This is how the market is valuing these. So I think a part of what's driving these up is no one wants to sell these things. There's 186 out of 20,000 listed right now.
Yeah.
I think there are some concerns out there of the bean art and essentially how differentiated a 20,000 set is going to be. On the flip side, I think a lot of people, including myself, are going to want to play the rare bean lotto. Like, if there's going to be spirits or golds in this set, everyone wants a shot at those because they're going to have a premium. I like the vision for beans, interactive NFTs, able to change the metadata. We haven't really seen anything like that too much. I actually own a few of the Azukis that have the flipped beans in the offhand. Like, I'm really hoping that my beans can interact with that in some capacity. And maybe there's going to be a premium for that. So again, it's mysterious. We don't really know too much. They did the soft reveal, which was super important, and I think will soften a potential floor dip on reveal here, because the market shouldn't be shocked that we're getting beans at the point. Like, we know what they are. Now we know what they're coming. So they're coming Thursday, right? Thursday's the 5th. So it's just a matter of when. They're absolutely one of the biggest winners. I think they're also pegged to Azukis. Azukis behind Doodles, second biggest winner since Otherdeeds came out. Their floor was 23.24. It's up around 28.5, 29 here. It's knocking on 30. We've seen it get to 34. So I think if the Azuki floor continues to rise, Beans will rise with it. As for an appropriate ratio, I think everyone is just pegging off how MAYC pegged to BAYC, but that's fairly meaningless, right? That's just one example. So there's no really golden ratio to my book. I think you'd be surprised if it ever passes 2-to-1 with a ratio of 10,000 to 20,000, because that would mean their market caps are essentially equivalent. But 3-to-1, why not? Especially if these are well liked. So I think this is now the marquee event of this week is Beans reveal, and it shows how sharp the Azuki founders are. This is the optimal time to launch a reveal like
the
this.
waiting.
They waited super long, but now we're in the most liquid market of all time. It's a high ceiling on where these could run right now.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where at 7 ETH, it's still not super crazy high compared to some of the other projects we've seen. It's still below the Bored Ape Kennel Dogs, which at this point in time, they're, I think, just so far forgotten in the Yuga ecosystem. Like, Meebits are getting even more love, it seems, right now. Codas have already flipped Mutant Apes, but now we see some of these other projects in that similar range. One that somewhat surprised hasn't moved more is Clone X. It's still has gotten back up to that 20 ETH. They are somewhat hurt by the fact that they're a 20,000 collection. But some of these lower end stuff. The other one I wanted to talk about while we're on reveals is Ragnarok. So Ragnarok meta is about 2.5 ETH floor now, and it held up well. So my original thought on Ragnarok, because their phase 1 of the mint that went immediately, it was sitting around this 2+ floor, but they only had half the supply. Now the full supply of the 7777 is out and still holding up at a 2.5 ETH floor. I believe they said that the reveal is going to be this week. Still, I'm not sure if they give it an exact time, but this is one to look for because it seems like there's a big following as far as like the crypto Twitter side goes. And these are ERC 1155s, which I thought was somewhat interesting as well. But this is one that I think could see some high sales on the higher end mints if you wanted to play the rare lotto on sort of this lower end. And then the other one, Imaginary Ones, I think isn't revealing for another week. So we don't necessarily have to talk about that one today. But yeah, what is your take on Ragnarok?
Yeah, I think Ragnarok is absolutely positioned to be one of the biggest winners of the week here. At 2.5 ETH pre-reveal, anyone who's selling Otherdeeds, it's an easy rotation over here, and especially if you could pick up 2. People are I'm seeing it labeled as the next Azuki. To me, it's because it's very Azuki-like
art-wise. Yeah.
You mentioned the crypto Twitter backing, so I guess the analogy that keeps coming to my mind is imposters more so than Azuki. They're trying to launch a game. They're launching a token. It's got that crypto Twitter, following and backing. So to me, it's imposters more than it is Azuki, kind of putting the art aside. I think my concern with this one is it follows an imposter's price arc, where it catches some early momentum and then just kind of fades out over time. There's big risk tied to any product trying to launch a game right now. And if the game doesn't work, if the price of entry to the game is too high, those are all fairly negative. So it's to me, it's efficiently priced right now. Certainly won't be surprised if we see a little run up here pre-reveal. Trying to play the rare lotto, but I'm probably gonna be watching this one.
Yeah, and sort of while we're on the topic of imposters, as you know, self-proclaimed imposter Maxi, they are doing their UFOs today. So they actually ended up picking a good time on it. I believe you can mint one per imposter. So this floor, as you mentioned, very similarly priced in that 2.5 range. I wouldn't I wouldn't say buy one right now because they are about to, people that have staked this whole way, you're able to buy a UFO, which is going to be part of a racing game that I think they're expecting to be ready relatively soon. But you can mint one of those per imposter. So I believe there's going to be 10,000 of them total, and you actually will pay for it in their token blood, which yesterday doubled in price after they made the announcement. So I think this is one of those other projects in this range that I think they're coming out with news currently, and they're going to start marketing it. And this is another place where I could see people looking, but I'd say in the short term, Ragnarok's a better play because you still have that rare lotto versus this one. If you didn't already have it, you can't actually participate in the UFOs, but the UFOs are going to have their own rarities. So if you did stake an imposter and didn't already know, that will be later today. I think at 5 Eastern, you'll be able to mint the UFO with the blood that you've earned. So I think to go off your point, I think it'll be interesting to watch what some of these games in the lower range are. It's almost like people have learned and aren't overpricing games as much as they used to. And maybe the 2 ETH floor is going to be sort of a regular for games moving forward as people are not overhyping them the same way they were in the past. So we'll see. But were there any other that were revealing, or are they just upcoming minutes that we're planning on looking on today? The other one I wanted to just note was Caked Apes made a little run earlier today. And not really fully sure why, but I've been seeing a lot more chatter and people posting them on Twitter. They, a week or two ago, got placed back on OpenSea. The DMCA got returned. I'm not sure what the correct terminology would be for it, but they're back on OpenSea and had got up to another 0.4 ETH floor. So is there any other projects in here that potentially got revived recently that you wanted to mention before we head to the upcoming mints?
Yeah, 2 more. So one, Cyber Brokers, absolutely one of the top winners
Yeah.
of the last 2 days. So I was thinking like that floor was down like low 2s. It's back almost near 4. I think there's some expectation of an announcement coming from them here this week or in the near future. Another one that's priced perfectly for a rotation from Otherdeeds. So I think clearly that's been a part of their inflow. And I want to touch on Moonbirds. We talk about Moonbirds on the Moonbirds Maxi, of course. You mentioned Yuga as the evil empire. Your words, not mine, but I will also call them the evil empire. Well, now I could definitely see a narrative of Kevin Rose, NFT Jesus, does everything the right way versus the evil empire Yuga, who is shrouded in mystery and burns their users and market for tens of thousands of ETH. The way Kevin Rose communicates is absolutely the polar opposite of Yuga. He runs weekly spaces. He ran a 2 last week. As soon as the Ryan Carson's debacle played out, spaces the next morning, taking questions from his Discord, pretty hard questions that he answered spot on. I mean, you can definitely cast doubt on Kevin for even having hired Carson with the way things played out, and I think that's very valid criticism. But how he's handled everything, his upfront communication, and the frequency of it is just so different that I can absolutely see that narrative here playing out. And while we don't really expect any groundbreaking announcements from Moonbirds here in the next week or two, they're at 1.9% listed right now.
Yeah.
Because of the nesting mechanic. So if any type of buy pressure moves to these, they can move up and move up quickly. And where they are priced near is Codas. So, to me, if I've got a couple Codas, selling one, rotating into Moonbirds could be fairly attractive.
Yeah, and I think that's the other take I think people have been saying on this sort of doodles as a geek push is people might immediately sell off their coda and buy one of these other ones. And yeah, Moonbirds is in that range as well. We had a comment here about the cake tapes. There's Huawei, I'm probably saying that wrong, but they're a big Chinese IT company with 8 million followers that tweeted about cake tapes. So, we have some people that say China doesn't do anything with NFTs, but maybe an 8 million follower account tweets about you and you go up 200%. So it's interesting when things get tweeted like that and they really pump. And the other one on here, Murakami Flowers. I'm not sure if you heard of when those are expected to reveal, because those moved up as well in another one in that range. Just seems like kind of that blue chip meta is a lot of these are just slowly rising. And that's why I think people might want to start looking at those 2 to 5 range items, because some of these there's really a separation now in the 5 to 10 range where it's now becoming like 5 to 20 range. And there might be some others that need to fill that sort of void. Who knows? But as you mentioned before, like $500 million just kind of got thrown around across the marketplace last few days. So there could be a lot of money still out there that's trying to make big plays on some of these smaller, lower end projects. So we'll see how that plays. But another option is to go towards these new mints. So I guess let's talk about the Phantom one first, because this one I've heard most about. They have 400,000 followers on Twitter, and seems like it's getting a ton of hype, and it's all over my timeline. So, what's your thoughts on Phantom Network? Because this project PXN seems to be potentially the biggest one of the week.
Yeah, it's the biggest one of the week. From a new mint perspective, I think it's the biggest one of this month. This is incredibly hyped. I want to say that a lot of the hype is coming from the NanoPass community, which is absolutely one of the bigger cult communities, clearly impacting markets with the projects that they follow and kind of gravitate towards. We see 415,000 followers. So clearly right off the bat, we know there's going to be a ton of hype around this one. The details, what we know, are fairly limited. Admittedly, I haven't dug deep into this one yet to really understand all the ins and outs of their roadmap and what they're planning to develop here. Just with everything going on with Otherdeeds in the past week, but it's definitely something I'll look to get into more here ahead of May 4th. So what we do know, at least at high level, the mechanics of the sale here, we can pull this up. So the public sale Dutch auction is the 4th, so that's Wednesday, right? Starting, it's going to be late. 10 p.m., 11 p.m. Eastern. It's going to start price at 2 ETH, reduces by 0.05. So this is going to be an interesting one. This is kind of my first time reading through all of this. Actually, let's get to Protocol 2. So that's going to be 4,000 of the supply. Then the whitelist supply is going to be 6,000, capped at 50% of Dutch auction, capped at 0.35. Wow. So 60% of the supply will be at 0.35. My gut says this thing mints out at 2 for the public sale.
Yeah, especially with that limited of a supply. And I know it doesn't sound like 4,000 doesn't sound too limited, but this is so hyped, and they have 400,000 followers. And I mean, even if you have a spot on the private on that private sale, you still probably are pretty hyped about the project. And we saw what happened with Ragnarok, and that's over 2 ETH. So I could see this, like you mentioned, sell out pretty immediately, and that's Wednesday night, right? So
yeah, Wednesday night.
A couple days for it to sort of build up that hype, but to me, that 15 minutes you'll know in the first section if it's going to mint out right away. That's sort of what Dutch auctions have been in a lot of ways, is they either will mint out right away, or it's sort of the hold the line and you wait it out a little bit. But that was 8 p.m. Pacific time,
Correct.
right? So starting at 11 p.m. Eastern, if it doesn't mint out right away, I don't know how many people want to like stay up all night watching it either. So that, I think, is somewhat bullish on it selling at 2 as well. So another way that people can be spending the money from the Otherdeeds. So this is the site. It's a pretty cool site, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Pretty
mean, it's one
techy.
of it's one of the more innovative out there. I think what's also smart about how they did the public sale is it's fair. So anyone who buys only pays the final price. But what ends up happening there is everyone just has incentive to fire early. So I think another reason why this one probably goes out at 2 ETH. But given the hype, I think there's probably some upside to firing it too for this one. So I'll definitely be doing some research into this one here this week ahead of the sale on Wednesday.
Yeah. And the other one this week is this Nano Pass, the Nano Pass 2. So the first Nano Pass has been pretty successful, I'd say. Another one that's somewhat surprising if you hadn't heard of it before. But what do you think about this phase 2 for the Nanoverse?
Yeah, so first to level set, I just got some info before the show that we don't have a target date for this yet, and that they're likely going to wait till after Phantom.
Okay.
They don't want to cannibalize their community. A lot of their community is all the whitelist for the most part for this one. But essentially, what the Nano Pass community is doing, they're launching a new PFP here for their phase 2 to expand their user base. It's going to have a coin mechanic, so each of these will generate 10 of the bits token daily. It's going to be 6,000 supply. The current Nano Pass holders are whitelisted, so it's going to be there's just a 455 whitelist for non-holders. So those are going to be pretty hard to get. And they've got more details about what you can do with the PFPs, some of the software, some of the access to VTubing, all that here. So we can go ahead and share this tweet. But certainly one of the more cult communities.
Do you think it's too limited? Like they're kind of, as you mentioned, they're kind of a cult community, but it seems like they're mostly keeping this to themselves.
That's a great point. It does feel that way. I'm surprised when I first read through this for the first time, right, that they're giving essentially all the passes over to their nano holders.
Yeah.
Which is essentially just giving them rights to kind of dump on the secondary market to a degree. But it's also a rewarding mechanism for them. So I understand that part of it. I'll be curious kind of what this does, kind of how this all shakes out with respect to their community. Does it, in fact, grow it? And by how much? But this is going to be one of the bigger drops for May, whenever it does come out as well. So definitely one that we'll pay attention to and try to keep some updated info on.
Yeah, we could see some decent secondary volume, especially with it's somewhat similar to Azuki to Beans, where if you're giving most of the supply to current holders, they might be the type of people that are more likely to not be listing it. So then if there's sort of a supply squeeze to other people who want to get in, that could be pretty bullish on price action of it. So that's one that we'll definitely be looking into a little more. And I just sent you a tweet that Artifact just posted about CloneX experience. They're calling it in New York, in Brooklyn, New York. And it's going to be on May 11th. So that's next Wednesday. And you'll probably see this, but they're doing this clone pass tomorrow for those people. So that'll be interesting because we haven't seen too many of these. VCon is doing this with the tickets, which if you've looked at that recently and were one of the buyers at 2 ETH, you're probably not super happy right now because it's below 0.3 ETH. But Do you think this is, and I don't want to say this is any sort of response to Yuga, but this is CloneX update right now, and they were the ones that haven't really seen too much of a push off of the Otherdeeds secondary volume. So I don't necessarily think this is going to pump CloneX much, but at least they're doing something else, and it's sort of a night party, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. So this is just one that I saw just popped up. Not sure if you have any take on this.
Yeah, I mean, this has been on the radar for a bit. I think part of the reason why CloneX hasn't moved in the market is we just had the big monolith reveal.
Yeah.
Just a week and a half ago at this point. So that's fairly fresh. I think people aren't really expecting a groundbreaking announcement from CloneX here in the near future, and that's why Doodles and Azukis have kind of jumped them a bit. But I mean, these events are always wild cards, right? Especially after Azuki just did their airdrop at their party. So I could definitely see some anticipation leading up to the 11th for some kind of an announcement. With that being said, for all the different NFT projects to have an IRL event in real life, I mean, Clone X would be one, and Artifact would be at the top of my list to go to with everything they're doing with Nike, augmented reality, with the shoes and the gear that they're working on. So I think that's going to be an awesome experience. So for anyone who has a shot to get out to Brooklyn for that, I mean, I'd go for it. I think that's going to be a really cool one.
Yeah. And then the last one I wanted to talk about, since we still have a little bit of time, probably this Degens one. So we saw that pump recently. I know you've been following this for a little while. Degens have been somewhat revitalized. One thing that I think pushes people off is that it shows 11,000 of them, but there's about 7,000 of them that are at a burn address. So, yeah, tell us a little about Degens and why these have been pumping recently.
Yeah, so Degens is the PFP from OSF and Mando. Those two kind of gained fame from having a very large Bored Ape Yacht Club position, and then Mando was one of the first to post NFT news on a very frequent basis. Built his account up doing that. OSF has kind of branched out into digital art, and he's made some fairly large super rare sales. I think his high is at 80, and he's had several at around 15 or 20. And then most recently, OSF and Mando have been partnering with Rug Radio. They do a daily NFT show. I think it's one of the best shows out there. It's kind of recapping daily information, big events, kind of talking through, hot news and whatnot. The reason that why Degens has been pumping, and for anyone who hasn't been following, this was a zero. This was actually at zero. I want to say in December of 2022. They've kind of pivoted into an alpha group. So they've got a Discord where they generate weekly field reports on different NFT products, essentially like research due diligence reports. And they've got like trading channels, things of that nature. So that's kind of what started getting them back up from zero to more like the 0.2, 0.3 range. And then OSF announced that he was going to be doing this PFP drop, a collaboration with Alien Queen. And for anyone who doesn't know who Alien Queen is, check out her Twitter, check out her super rare page. I kind of think of her as the female Killer Acid. Killer Acid, who has that trippy style art. It's very iconic. If you see a piece, you know it's Killer Acid. She has a kind of similar style. And this is going to be a free mint PFP for anyone who holds a Degens or a Regens, as well as any of OSF's editions or artwork. And this has been kind of driving the Degens action as people are starting to price in this PFP. There's been a lot of tweets from Alien Queen and OSF lately on, when is this coming? And these guys are smart. They know how liquid the market is. I think this comes this week. And I think there's some nice upside for this PFP given OSF's success in the art world. Given their ties to Rug Radio and their outreach. So I think if we do get a concrete announcement, I'll expect some decent run up in Degens and Regens ahead of that.
Yeah, and it already has pumped a lot. It was, I think when we originally were talking about this, they were around 0.2 and 0.2, 0.3-ish range. And part of it was there's going to be somewhat of a supply squeeze. Just the fact that it's going to be, some people think that there's 11,000 degens, but there's actually only 4,000 of them. So I think that created part of it as well. When it ran up a little faster. And yeah, 0.7, if you think that this OSF drop can be in that range, then it's probably still a decent buy. And we're both already holders of these, but I'm not sure if I would be a buyer at 0.7 or not. It's hard to say. Like when we were buying at 0.25 or however long ago, it was a little different than now. But like you mentioned, the market's in a pretty good spot right now, and they have a pretty big following. Especially there's overlap with the Bored Ape community and them, so I could see that being good. Something to keep your eye out on this week. And obviously, we are doing the NFT news product updates page now, which as soon as that comes live, we'll probably be tweeting about it, posting about it. So make sure that you're following us on there. But yeah, I think in general, this is going to be a week to watch and see how the money flows. Because I think after the Moonbirds, a lot of money did flow into some of these other projects. If Doodles come out with something, any sort of news, can see a lot going towards there. But then there's the Phantom Mint. So there's a lot else going on that if some of these get caught, I don't know if that's necessarily the correct term, but if they get caught in that sort of wave, then we could see some pretty big runs in some of these projects and newer projects coming this week. So it'll be exciting. Look out for that beans reveal. That's been one that people have been waiting almost 6 weeks for, and now we're going to see. Now we found out what's in the box, what the beans are going to look like. So keep an eye out on that. And yeah, if you have other deeds, we'll obviously be following that along as well, because hopefully they'll be just continually adding more information about what the other side is and what CODAs are. So keep an eye out on that. Tyler and I will be back here on Thursday. I will be bringing on the Mooncats tomorrow. That should be a cool show. They have some fun stuff that they want to be updating people on. So keep your eye out on that. And then we'll see you guys back here on Thursday.